I'm going to highlight a few important passages from Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 1. And this scene really deals with parenting, some of the difficulties of parenting, and the odd things that parents do to, and maybe they think for, their children. It starts with a conversation between Polonius and Reynaldo. Polonius is the father of Ophelia and Laertes, and Reynaldo is a man that he's hired. So he's hired him to go visit Laertes and bring him some notes and some money, but he also asks him to spy. He says, before you visit him, to inquire of his behavior. Ask people how he's acting. And Polonius says to say that you know me, you know his father, and impart him, but, you may say, not well. So you don't know Laertes all that well. Tell people you kind of know him, you know me. But if it be he, I mean, he's very wild. So Reynaldo, tell everybody that Laertes is a wild man, addicted so-and-so, and there put on him what forgeries you please, marry none so rank as may dishonor him. So the father here is saying, go and spread lies or spread rumors about my son and his behaviors, but not really bad ones. Just spread some ones like maybe he's addicted or something like that. And Reynaldo says, oh, like gaming, my lord? And Polonius says, aye, yes, or drinking, fencing, swearing, quarreling, drabbing, you may go so far. So Polonius basically says you can spread these rumors, these lies. These are not off limits for you. He's involved in wasteful gambling, excessive drinking, frivolous fighting, foul language, and visiting prostitutes. Reynaldo is a little surprised at this. He says, my lord, that would dishonor him. And Polonius has a speech that I've shortened here a little bit, but he says, but breathe his faults so quaintly that they may seem the taints of liberty. So Polonius says, yes, I want you to spread these rumors, spread these lies, but don't go overboard. Just make him seem like a boy who is acting a little wild in his first taste of freedom. Polonius continues, you, laying these slight sullies on my son, as 'twere a thing a little soiled in the working, mark you, your party in converse, him you would sound, having ever seen in the predominant crimes the youth you breathe of guilty, be assured, he closes with you in this consequence, good sir, or so, or friend, or gentleman, according to the phrase or the addition of the man and country. So what's going on here is Polonius said you're going to lay slight sullies, so slight dirty things, or slight rumors, slight lies on my son, as it were a thing a little soiled in the working. So you're just kind of putting a little dirt on him. And then it says, mark you your party in converse. And it says that he's going to close with you. So the person that you're talking to will disclose the information. He will show you what you need to know. When you spread these rumors, say little bad things about Laertes, watch how the people react. What do the reactions tell you? Do they confirm or do they deny? So if you say, oh, you know, Laertes, he's such a wild man, I heard that he gambles a lot, then watch them, and if they seem to nod and agree with this, then you'll know, yeah, he's gambling. So you can run through and just go through the checklist, see all the things that he's doing, and report back to me. So here we have a parent who's spying on his son. Not only is he spying, but he's intentionally spreading rumors to sully his son, to dirty his son, to make him have a bad reputation. And the whole point of this is that Polonius wants to know the truth. We've seen this idea of being uncertain of the truth throughout the play from the very first scene. And here is a parent wanting to know the truth about his child and actually using lies, spreading rumors to find the truth. And this is how he justifies it. See you now? Your bait of falsehood takes this carp of truth, and thus we do of wisdom and of reach, with windlasses and with essays of bias, by indirections find directions out. So he's saying, with a fishing metaphor, he says, your bait of falsehood your little worm of a rumor, of a lie, takes this carp of truth. You'll catch the fish of truth with the bait or worm of a lie. And we'll be wise from that. We'll understand, we'll get wisdom from this. And the essays there is trials or attempts. So with essays of bias, so by putting out a little bias of there and attempting to find the truth with a little bit of bias, we'll end up getting to it. So by indirections, by lies, we will find directions out. So on the surface of the language, it's really easy to see this metaphor of fishing for the truth, but there's also a bit of a paradox. And that paradox is that you have to use lies to find the truth. Maybe I shouldn't say you have to, but sometimes people do use lies to find the truth. But Polonius says, don't leave your knowledge of Laertes up to just this test. He says, observe his inclination in yourself. So once you spread these rumors and you think you've got an idea of what's going on with Laertes, go and watch him yourself. Trust only your own eyes. Don't trust gossip. Go see for yourself. Get evidence with your eyes of what he's doing. After this section, Ophelia comes in. She's quite upset. So Reynaldo has left, and now Ophelia enters to see her father. She says, Lord Hamlet, with his doublet all embraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, ungartered, and down gyved to his ankle, pale as his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous in purport, as if he had been loosed out of hell, to speak of horrors, he comes before me. And Polonius says, mad for thy love? So what Ophelia is describing is she's just sitting in her room, I believe she's sewing at the time, and Hamlet comes in. It says with his doublet all unbraced, his shirt undone, unbuttoned, no hat upon his head, without his hat, which is kind of a sign of being formal, wearing a hat. His stockings fouled, dirty socks, ungartered and down gyved to his ankle, which means his socks are not only dirtied, but the little garters, the little belts to hold his socks up, are off, and so his socks are falling down. Remember, they didn't really have elastic during this time. Pale as his shirt, so his face was all white and pale. His knees knocking each other, shaking with nerves, and with a look so piteous in purport as if he had been loosed out of hell. His face actually looks like he's just come from hell, and he's going to speak some horrors. That's the way he came to me. And Polonius believes that this is just Hamlet who's gone insane because he loves Ophelia. And then Ophelia describes what he does. So after she's described how he looked, she describes what he does. And she says, he took me by the wrist and held me hard. Then goes he to the length of all his arm, and with his other hand thus o'er his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face, as he would draw it, long stayed he so. So he grabs her wrist, really intensely, and it's very forcefully, and he stretches his arm out, so he holds her at arm length, and then he puts the other hand on his forehead, and he studies her face. So this is kind of awkward, right? He's just staring right at her and holding onto her hard with his hand over his forehead. And he looked at it as if he was going to draw it with a pencil, to make a drawing of it. He stayed there for a very long time. But that's not it. At last, a little shaking of my arm, and thrice his head thus waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous and profound, as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. That done, he lets me go, and with his head over his shoulder turned, he seemed to find his way without his eyes, for out of doors he went, without their helps, and to the last bended their light on me. So he shook her arm, and thrice his head thus waving up and down, so he nodded his head 3 times after shaking her arm, and then he sighs just a body-shaking sigh. And then it's really odd there. It says his head is over his shoulder, so he twists his head back to look at her, and then he walks out of the door without looking where he's going. So again, kind of intensely awkward scene. They don't talk at all. He walks in, grabs her arm, really forcefully shakes it, and then turns his head to watch her as he walks out of the door without looking where he's going. Polonius thinks he knows what's up. He says, "This is the very ecstasy of love, whose violent property foredoes itself and leads the will to desperate undertakings, as oft as any passion under heaven. What have you given him any hard words of late?" So Polonius says, oh yeah, this is love. Love foredoes itself. So love ruins the person who loves and leads that person to desperate things, to desperate undertakings. And love does this as oft as any passion under heaven. So love is as often as any other passion, like hate or joy or desire or anything else, it will lead people to do crazy things as often as anything else. And then you see, Polonius thinks this might be Ophelia's fault. He says, "What have you given him any hard words of late? Did you say something mean to him?" So a couple things here. First of all, this whole thing is asking, can you trust your emotions? Are they true? Because love often leads people to do things that are not good for them. If you feel it, should you act? But then we have this odd thing where Polonius says basically to Ophelia, well, have you been mean to Hamlet? And in the previous act, he told Ophelia not to spend any time with her and not with him and not to talk to him at all. So it's a little ironic. Ophelia says, "No, my good lord, but as you did command, I did repel his fetters and denied his access to me." So whose fault is this? If Polonius is saying, well, the way you treated him caused these things to happen, well, she was just following your orders. And then just so we understand the language here, fetters are straps or chains to bind or hold somebody down. So she said she did repel his fetters when he was trying to get to her and spend time with her. She kind of gave him the cold shoulder and denied his access to me. And these are the two things that Polonius told Ophelia not to give to Hamlet, her time and her words. Polonius says, "That hath made him mad. I am sorry that with better heed and judgment I had not quoted him. I feared he did but trifle, and meant to wreck thee, but beshrew my jealousy. By heaven, it is as proper to our age to cast beyond ourselves in our opinions, as it is common for the younger sort to lack discretion." So he thinks that this is a response to Ophelia denying time and words to him, and he thought that Hamlet was just kind of playing Ophelia. But what's really odd here is he says, beshrew my jealousy. So what is Polonius jealous of? Time with Hamlet? Why? Because Hamlet has power? Because he's part of the royal line? But then it's also really interesting what he says here, this kind of paradox of parenting. What's the problem with old people? Old people cast beyond themselves in their opinions. Old people try to control younger people too much. They tell them what to do, like he just told Ophelia what to do. And what's the problem with younger people? They lack discretion. They don't know how to act. They need people to tell them what to do. So this is kind of a recipe for disaster because old people tell their opinions too much and young people need somebody to tell them what to do. They need somebody to give them ideas or principles on how to act. They need to know older people's opinions. So I hope this helped you understand the scene. It also is really important that you go back and read through Shakespeare's language and get more comfortable with that.